Good thing my sound wasn't on just now. My husband decided to blast music throughout the entire house. He always forgets I have a speaker.
I kind of wish we had heard what Matt's listening to.
It sounds like some reggae today. Sounds like that's the
Oh,
vibe of the day.
I like that. Always good vibes. That's funny.
All right. I think we'll go ahead and get started here. Thank you guys for joining. Mark's going to hop in at the end of the call. He had a meeting he knew would run late, so I'm going to start off here. And today we know it's been 2 weeks since we last spoke about the new clear cooperation policy from MIBOR. So we wanted to touch back on clear cooperation. We wanted to have discussions surrounding it, see what questions you guys have had since we last spoke about it. And all of that good stuff. I have had several questions. I have one repeating question that has come up multiple times in the past 2 weeks. So I wanted to touch base on that. I'll do that first. And then you guys please chime in as you have questions or things that you've been seeing regarding clear cooperation. And we'll discuss those. So one of the questions I got regarding clear cooperation, which really I've had discussions with MIBOR. It actually has nothing to do with clear cooperation. But I understand the question, and I honestly had the question myself. And so I did go to MIBOR just to make sure that I was telling you all the right thing. But we've had a number of agents have questions about what happens in a scenario where I have a seller, they've told me they want to list their house. We don't yet have a listing contract in place. And all of a sudden they've found a buyer, right? That buyer may or may not have their own agent. What do I do? How do I proceed with listing that property? It's a great question. And I think this is something that actually comes up a lot. I would say I've seen this, almost 50% of the time when you go to list a house, someone says, hey, I told my neighbor I was going to be selling their house, my house, and their cousin wants to buy it, right? Like that always happens. My first suggestion when that happens comes to a listing contract. Go ahead when you're doing that listing contract, prep your seller, because we hear this all the time. And I would say a large majority of the time, that cousin doesn't end up buying the house. Let's go ahead and get a listing contract in place that would allow for you to sell it to that cousin, should that happen, or also quickly pivot and just list the house and get a normal regular buyer in the traditional sense. So a lot of times when they're coming to us with this, it's because they want a discounted commission, right? So if that's something you decide, go ahead, write up the listing contract as normal, just like you would for any other listing, whatever your commission is. In the further conditions at the end, if you are agreeing to a one-time deal because they found this buyer, you're not really going to have to do the marketing, whatever the case may be, go ahead and further conditions and write in, should X name, whoever that buyer is, purchase the house, commission is to be X. And then you can lay that out, whether there's a BAC or if you're representing both parties, but put that additional verbiage in there that protects you for that one buyer and allows you to be able to extend that offer to your seller. But then if that doesn't work out, like we've traditionally seen is the majority, Steve, you're not the only one that's had this. I've had this question more times than I can count in the 2 weeks. So if that doesn't work out, then you list it and it goes on the market and you already have that listing contract in place. It's really easy. Now, how does this look for clear cooperation? That's been the biggest question, right? Like, how do I actually list this property and not violate any of our clear cooperation policy? So if that seller were out there telling neighbors about their property, you don't yet have a listing contract in place, you did not violate clear cooperation. Going ahead and listing and then immediately pending the property would be the best route to take according to my conversations with MyBor. So you've gotten that listing contract in place. You have 2 days to list the property at that point. You can go ahead and get that purchase agreement in place with that specific buyer that they've brought to you or that has come from some other means. Of course, not showing, so you're not showing the property within those 2 days, because if you do that, you have to open it up to any realtor or any buyer showing the property. But you can go ahead and work with that buyer that the seller brought to you before listing contract and work with them and quickly list then pen the property. Does that make sense to everyone? I think it feels like it's against our clear cooperation policy, right? But in all of my discussions with MyBor, it is not, and they were very clear about that. Now, the thing to be aware of is that it could create questions, right? Another agent sees that go active and then quickly pinned. They're going to have questions likely. They very well could call MyBor. And MyBor has seen this already. And they might say, hey, I saw this happen. I think the agent was doing something. MyBor is directing questions like that to agents. So I think if you're doing everything above board, and it was very clearly your seller bringing this buyer in and you not marketing the property prior to listing it, everything is above board. You can easily explain the situation. I do think if you start to have this more and more, if MyBor's getting lots of calls about you doing this, it's going to raise some questions, and MyBor might be watching you a little bit more closely. I don't say that to threaten you guys. I would want to know that someone's watching me. So.
Can I ask a quick question to clarify?
Sure.
So say I have somebody who has a property for me that they want to find buyers for, and I want to tell the brokerage about it, but I don't have a signed listing contract yet. Am I able to do that because I'm not violating anything because I don't yet have a signed listing contract? Does that make sense?
Yeah, you're not violating clear cooperation if you don't have a signed listing contract. If you have a signed listing contract and you start marketing, which marketing can be word of mouth, speaking, sharing it with the office, posting it on our internal Facebook, that would be against clear cooperation. In that case, you would want to get, if you had a listing contract in place, and you wanted to be able to market to our agents, you would just need to do that office exclusive.
Okay, so it sounds like I can market the property now without a listing contract and be okay. And as soon as we had somebody, I can make sure everything was signed and get it pended.
Yeah, that is a really good question. I think I would be hesitant to say like, you can list that on social media. I mean, granted, you don't have a listing contract. That seller is not obligated to list or sell with you. At that point, I do think that is kind of maybe bending the clear cooperation rules. And I'm not sure how my board would view that, or what they would say if you're like posting on social media and marketing a property that you don't yet have a listing contract for. That is not against clear cooperation. I'm not saying it is, but I wonder what kinds of things they might put in place to keep those kind of situations from happening.
Yeah, that makes sense. And in that situation, I think I would only do it to the brokerage and not publicly, but just kind of putting feelers out there if it were still okay to do. And it sounds like it's kind of a gray area that's towing up on a line for sure.
It absolutely is. And I think we've seen that internally too, where people are asking about properties that might be available. We don't yet have listing contracts in place. And we're like, oh yeah, we kind of have this property over here. And I think that's very gray. Like, that is not the intention of the clear cooperation policy. You know, they want it to be very kind of black and white. Like, if you are talking about a property, you should have a listing contract in place. And then if you have that listing contract in place, you should have the office exclusive signed if you're not putting it out on the BLC. So that's a great question, Natalie. Yeah. So I do think that this is important. And I think there's a reason we've been seeing this more and more. I don't think it has anything to do with clear cooperation necessarily. I think it has to do with lack of inventory. And so I think we'll continue to see this. And so as you have questions about it and maybe something feels kind of weird to you, let Mark and I know. Like, we're happy to walk through these scenarios with you, because I know everyone is very unique. There's different players involved, different sellers. Your sellers might be encouraging you to do something that you don't necessarily feel all that comfortable with. In that case, come to us, and we'll help you walk through it. We don't want you to get fined by MyBor. And that's really like the risk here, is getting a fine by MyBor. So for that reason, I would encourage you, please don't show a property once you have that listing contract in place, regardless of if those sellers brought the buyer or not. That all needs to be done prior to them having that listing contract in place. What other questions have you guys had come up over the past 2 weeks regarding clear cooperation? I think I see about 4 people on here that have had this very specific thing. So when I say you're not alone, and I've been getting this a lot, that truly is the case. So everyone thinks clear cooperation now is like clear and plain as day. Is that what we're getting to? That makes me really happy. I also discussed with MyBor the use of coming soon signs, and I think we discussed this as a brokerage, and they very clearly said, hey, you can now market things as coming soon. They almost were encouraging about it. You just have to have it in temporarily off market status. I don't know about you guys, but I really love this rule, because I think the coming soon thing the past couple of years has been kind of weird and wonky. Like, you could do it if you had an exemption in place, but like, what did it really do? And I think now being able to put a sign in the yard and put a coming soon writer up and have it listed as TOM, it allows another broker out there, if they have the buyer, to be able to pull the information on your listing. I actually had a TOM over the past 2 months, and I got multiple calls from agents asking about the property, saying like, hey, the moment it comes on the market, please let us know. So I had a little list going, and I was able to have conversations with my sellers while they weren't ready to have their house on the market, about activity that I was seeing even with it in TOM status. So I thought that was really good. And I think it makes us, again, more of the expert, because we can find the information on the TOM. If your client comes to you and says, hey, I'm really interested in this house, I drove by and saw a sign, be sure you're searching TOM. If you don't find it, just by a normal search, because that's where you're going to find the data and be able to provide them some information about that listing. It looks like we have some questions. Emily, what's your comment or question about TOM?
So I just wanted to remind everybody that that when you do a TOM and it goes active, even though the ticker starts as the first date on, it does not show up in MyBor as a new listing. It shows up in MyBor under the category of back on the market. Is anyone aware of this?
I wasn't. So
like, I know that for me, and I don't know how people use MyBor, but I use the search screen on the bottom, and just, I'm always, every time I'm signing on, like looking at what's new on the market. But when you go from temporarily off market to active, because I just did this with my listing on Gray Street, because we were temporarily off market, it will not show up in that. It goes back on the market. And I don't know, one, if that's something that maybe we can talk to MyBor about, like, because I think that it will still populate the searches. It still populates like it's new on the market, because if you've got a search set up for your clients or something like that and everything else. But I just know in that capacity, if you're just watching that feed, that does not show up. And so I was a little disappointed by that, because, you know, like, I don't know if people missed it. I don't know, you know, the market's moving so fast. And I think because there's such short or low inventory, people are really aware of what's on the market. And so they're just checking that next thing to see what's happening. So I don't know if that's a comment we can ask, or if there's a reason for that, or if that's just a back end system thing that could be updated, because it does create a little bit of a challenge.
I think it's definitely something to ask MyBor about and make them aware of. I've found with TOM that they're still working out some of the kinks on it.
Yeah.
So Emily, that property that you had listed TOM, it wasn't active at any point. You listed it after the new clear cooperation, so you were able to enter it as TOM from the very start. Is that right?
From the very start, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Doesn't seem to make a lot of sense that it would show up as back on the market. So
it's just I think it's just listed as a status change in their system. So even like when I print out the, you know, BLC for people to look at, the listing sheets, it even says it at the bottom of it. So yeah, just a heads up. And just for a heads up for anyone else who's doing it, that like I was shocked, because I was excited. I was like, I always check my stuff to see if it looks right and it's upright. And I was like, where is it? And then I realized, oh, it's in the back on the market section of that. So
yeah.
Yep.
That's good to know. Anyone else have any experiences with TOM over the past few weeks that they would like to share? Okay, good. Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen, honestly, besides this question, I haven't seen too many issues pop up with the new clear cooperation policy. I don't love every piece of it. I also am one, though, that often will fight change. So I'm learning, and I'm learning to like it a little bit more. And I'm understanding how it's benefiting me as an agent. What else?
Hey, Jess.
Yeah.
How can you in terms of listing a property and saying it's not yet available for showings, but having it active, how many days are you allowed to not allow showings while the property is in active status?
Great question. I knew someone was going to ask a very detailed question like that. So I have my clear cooperation matrix set up, and it would need to be available for showings. I thought it was within 7 days. Yes, 7 days. So if you guys haven't already, and I know I sent this out, but I sent it out months ago. If you go into Matrix and you go to the resources tab, there is a listing status quick guide. It is so incredibly helpful. It's a bunch of boxes. It goes over each status. So it has active traditional, active no showings, temporarily off market, office exclusive, and withdrawn. And it tells you all the dates and guidelines that you have to follow, including marketing that's allowed on each type of listing that you have there and those statuses. So you're always welcome to ask me questions, but that is kind of my go-to quick guide, because there are so many different statuses now that allow a different number of days for different things. I can't memorize them all yet, so I go there often to figure out those. Anything else on clear cooperation before we switch gears here? Rosie, is she here? We were texting back and forth. The Bottleworks Office.
Oh, yes. Got it. I'm coming back from a day off yesterday, so I have no idea what's going on right now. Yeah, so I'm not exactly sure what I should share about Bottleworks, but I'm just going to tell you what I know. And that is that I'm not sure how familiar you guys are with like things we've had in the works, but we switched places. So originally we were going to be situated right under the movie theater at Bottleworks, but we have switched around the space we're going to be in to a slightly larger space, and that is right on Mass Ave, actually, under the High Alpha building. So there's about 5 shops right there. We'll be in one of them right next to the dry bar if anyone likes to get their hair blown out. So yeah, that's really exciting. We are working with our architects right now to kind of finalize the site design. So right now we're thinking we'll have about 8 offices there, some of those multiple people offices, and we'll have 3 conference rooms there. Praise Jesus for more conference rooms. So yeah, and we are targeting a December open date there. Kristen, great question about parking. There will be a garage there. We're still figuring out the specifics of like what that is going to look like and how you pay and what you pay and whatever. So I'm going to kind of say no comment on that one. Sorry, that's not helpful, but we just haven't gotten to that yet. So any other questions about Bottleworks or future offices? Happy to share what I know. Jess, anything else that I'm supposed to cover?
Well, Mark said an office preview. Does that mean we're allowed to show them? Like the floor plan?
Say this. Sorry, I didn't get this text or email or whatever. Yeah, I can pull up what I have.
Office preview.
Okay, I mean, whatever. I'll show you what our architects sent over. It's really fun to look at.
I think
Okay, give me just a second. I'm gonna pull it up on my email. Okay, folks, I am about to share my screen. Okay, are you guys seeing the floor plan currently? Okay, cool. So this would be the front entrance. You can see the 3 conference rooms, one here in front, in the back, and then we have our offices kind of lining. We have some phone booths in there. And then as always, that like kind of tried and true open space that agents can just like come and work in. Yeah, I think we think through a lot when we are building our offices, but one of the things is how light transfers, and we want our offices to feel like open and airy and pretty. So that'll be a lot of very similar to the color scheme here at 16th Street, but lots of white walls, black doors, all those kind of things. So I'm gonna scroll down and show you the really fun stuff, pictures. So obviously this is not gonna look exactly like this in the end, but this is kind of some of the stuff we're looking at right now. So front office space, and then gives you another view there. One of the interesting things about this space is how it has incredibly high ceilings. So we're trying to figure out how best to utilize that space. We really wanted to put in a mezzanine level, but that just did not end up working out construction-wise. Just not enough, basically like metal beams to support that. But so anyway, we have these really amazing high ceilings that we're working to make sure those look pretty. There you go, you can get a better view of the high ceilings there. And again, we're like getting features that highlight light transfer, even the transom windows in the offices, and cut throughs in different areas. So yeah, that's what that's the kind of fun overview. If you want to see what we're working on, we're really excited about it. I think a lot of you guys know that construction kind of goes on its own timeline. So we just got those plans back and finalized from our architects this week. And now we are putting out bids to contractors to build that out. So we're hoping for December, but we will keep you posted. This is Michelle commenting to everyone. She just has my name. So yeah, we definitely don't have a finalized plan for parking yet. Keep you posted. Any other questions about that? Okay, we're pumped for office number 2. We're thinking through lots of different things. So let us know, comments, suggestions.
If you want to get your office on the calendar.
Yeah, if you want office space, let Michelle and I know.
But
No idea on price yet, but we can lock you in. Do something. Okay, cool. Just anything else we're supposed to cover in this call that I have no idea what's happening on?
Just got clear cooperation in office. So I think Mark thought I would be a little bit more long-winded on clear cooperation in that one item. Unfortunately, I can't talk as much as Mark.
No one can talk as much as Mark. Mark can talk for 45 minutes to a wall. So and I've said this to him to his face so many times, it's not funny. So I feel no guilt that he's not here and I'm saying that.
Anything else you want to chime in on, or you have any questions surrounding any of the things we touch on, speak now or save it for next week. But I'd love to talk through anything else that you guys might have. Maybe some of you are a little more long-winded than I am. Natalie, you just unmuted. I'm not calling you out. I just saw you unmuted. She's ghosting me now.
Okay, whatever, Natalie, come on. talk for us.
Hey, Natalie.
Yeah, it just looked like you unmuted yourself, so we were seeing if you wanted to say anything, but guess not.
I don't think she has good service. All right, you guys. Thank you all for joining us this morning. Hope you guys have a good rest of your week. If you need anything, let us know.
Okay.